Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this thing that we're doing, this set of go lives. Here you might be on Facebook Live, you might be on YouTube Live, you might be watching recordings. So you're live probably, but I'm not. I'm recording. But however it is that we are communicating here, welcome to this thing. Today was a more informal thing than yesterday's webinar, but you can communicate with us. You can put enter chat into whatever you're using, Facebook or YouTube, and we will see it and we will respond. Chances are, unless we don't, maybe you're just saying hi, but you can have the opportunity, you have the option to actually comment and we will respond. This is informal, so we can, answer questions. We can do that sort of thing, and you're welcome to do that. We love the questions. So today's topic, if you will, is more of the NLP focused. We do three things basically at the Essential Coaching Skills cohorts, the teaching cohorts that we do over a 4-month period, and then we rotate. So we're opening the doors for another membership group to come in. We do this every 6 months or so, something like that. So it's a year-long opportunity for you to join us, and you can take all the courses we do in that 12-month period, year-long period. And very, very welcome to have you join us at any point, starting now. The store will be open, the gates will be open, the cart will be open for a few more days, I think a week probably from this point forward as I record this on the 20th of March. So get yourself in gear and join us. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking more about NLP. We do basically three things, as I started to say. We do sleight of mouth, we do generalized NLP, and we do neo-Ericksonian hypnosis. Sleight of mouth, we look at how we can use that to shift beliefs. If a person is stuck in a certain way of being, it's often because they've got a belief that's in their way, something that they've usually not chosen to have, but they have kind of been factory preset or foisted upon them. Just partially why Dave Dobson used to say that he wasn't so much a hypnotist as he was a de-hypnotist. He had to, perturb people's unuseful systems and habits and programming and trances that they've been living in. But we do that through conversational belief change, sleight of mouth. That's when we do this as a program, as a cohort. We do that on Tuesdays. Wednesdays, we do NLP. Now, I will say this. One of the reasons I've asked a very special guest to be here today is that the way NLP was taught, and is still taught in many places, is that you teach a practitioner level course. There's intro courses of various kinds. Tony Robbins used to do a firewalk experience, was an intro to NLP. He was an NLP trainer back in the day. So his firewalk experience was an intro to NLP. And then he got people to come for a full weekend. And then they got people to come to a certification. I know this because I did that. I became certified in NLP from Tony Robbins. I got my certification in 1986 from Tony. And Robbins Research International, as it was called at the time. So what you did is you got your practitioner level certification. Then if you really wanted to take it to the next level was a master practitioner certification. So you became a master practitioner. Cool. Then what? Then the next level would be to become a trainer of NLP. You became a certified trainer. You could become a master trainer, but what do those people do? They train people in the practitioner levels and the master practitioner level. So it sort of created this system, almost like a Ponzi scheme. I don't want to say that exactly, but it was kind of like, it created all these schools of people learning to be a practitioner, learning to be a master practitioner. Then they got to be trainers. They'd start theirs, learning practitioners, teaching master practitioner, sort of thing. It was only relatively recently people said, well, how are we going to use this? And some of my guests on my podcast, my Essential Coaching Skills podcast, have been people who have used it for sales and persuasion. That's an application of NLP, right? But so is coaching. I call what I do essential coaching skills. I think NLP is an essential coaching skill. So that's in fact why I started this whole thing, is because I was thinking when I became a coach from Thomas Leonard, I saw these coaches running around the world who knew nothing about NLP, didn't even know what NLP stands for. Neuro linguistic programming, for those of you who don't know. And I thought to myself, how can they be coaches? How can they coach somebody if they don't know some essentials of NLP, like the meta model? How can you do that? I didn't know. So I said I started this for that. So my guest today is not, teaching practitioners to be practitioners of NLP. She's not teaching master practitioner trainings. She's taken the NLP trainings and applied them in her own life, and I want to find out how, and we'll let you know about that in just a few minutes when we invite her onto the proverbial stage here. On Thursdays during our cohort, and tomorrow during our live, we talk about neo-Ericksonian hypnosis, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow. And of course, it is Ericksonian hypnosis plus. It is Ericksonian hypnosis as best we can do in 4 months, but it's also other things as well, because I learned Ericksonian hypnosis, if you will, from second generation, or maybe they were first generation, but it wasn't Erickson. It was the people that Erickson taught, like Stephen Gilligan and Bill O'Hanlon and David Gordon and all those people. I learned from them. So at best, it could be said it's neo-Ericksonian. But I also learned from people like, Richard Bandler, who wasn't officially an Ericksonian. He modeled Erickson, if you will. Bandler and Grinder sort of kind of modeled him and became, certain things that are extracted, language patterns, or the Milton model, if they call it, language patterns, is kind of a take on Ericksonian hypnosis without being Ericksonian hypnosis. There's an aspect of it. Very, very useful. But is it Ericksonian? Not really. And I also learned from Dave Dobson, who has his own way of doing things that was similar to Ericksonian, but different. So again, talk more about that tomorrow, but be here tomorrow, 1 o'clock, if you want to learn more about that, 1 o'clock Eastern. But today, it's all about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So let me just see here. I think I'm getting some comments. Yeah, great. Thanks, Linda. Appreciate you saying so. So today I'm going to invite to the stage here Seema Newell, and I'm not going to spend a long time introducing her because she can do a much better job of that than I can. But she is a wonderful person and a huge exemplar, in my opinion, of how people can use these skills of NLP in ways that are useful for them in their business, and how therefore you can use NLP in your business in the way that you can use stuff. It doesn't have to be just the road of I'm going to now become a trainer of other trainers and blah, blah, blah. So with no further ado, let me invite onto the stage Seema Newell. Give her a big hand, a big round of applause to all the people here. Hi, Seema. How are you?
Hi. I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Thanks. So just for the sake of our listeners here, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you live and where you're from and what you do and that sort of thing?
Yeah, with pleasure. So my name is Seema Newell. I am an executive coach. I support women leaders who are told they are too direct, or who are so people-pleasing that they get all the projects and not the promotions, to move through that and get the recognition, rewards, promotions, roles, etc., that they desire and deserve. So you still there, Doug?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. You can't see me?
Okay, I just see me. Good. So I'm like, oh, let me talk about me. And I'm like, well, I just see me. So,
okay, I'm just going to leave it up to you now. I'm going to go get some coffee and you carry on. Have a good time with all the people watching. That's good. So, I'll just minimize myself. How about that? I'll make you big and me small. And
there we go. At least then, this rapport thing, right? Which is very important. It's really hard when you can't see the other person.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I run online programs. I run online trainings. I do group coaching. And then I have some, private coaching practice as well. And
nice.
Yes.
Cool.
And I apply the essential coaching skills.
You're located where?
Oh, sorry. I'm in Switzerland, near Geneva.
You don't sound like you're Swiss.
No, I grew up in Montreal.
Oh.
Yeah, but I've been here since 1997, so a good long time. I worked many, many years in the UN.
Uh-huh.
And yeah,
Cool.
so
In New York
yeah.
City? Yeah.
So my brother is a New Yorker, and he actually now lives, I think, near you up in the Hudson Valley in
Okay.
Rhinebeck. hmm
Nice.
So yeah, so I do sometimes, but mostly Canada and now Switzerland. I've really been here, Now that
So
I'm a
when you
mom, I'm a little more fixed.
so when you were working for the UN, it was like not at the UN.
No, it was in Geneva. It was
Ah,
here in Geneva. Yeah, I was working in the United Nations Joint Program on HIV and AIDS. I'm an engineer by training, so I was the Chief Information Officer. I was responsible for all of IT for the whole organization globally,
huh.
90
Cool.
countries. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
I never knew that. That is very cool. That is very cool.
And therefore, had to kind of learn, when I pivoted, I took, there's a long story as to why I did this, but when I did finally do it and I finally pivoted, what I wanted to take was the part of my role that I loved, which was mentoring people. And
Mhm.
as an engineer, I had a very analytical view of the world. And we've had to soften that a little bit and understand more about people, how the mind works, and Doug, you've really been essential in that, in my growth in that. So really
Thank you.
appreciate it, because I think I would be a sort of a pretty horrible coach if I just took the mechanical lens of it all, as it were.
Yeah, it is interesting too. The coaching field has lots of different background, people from different backgrounds, and I'm a musician, but so I incorporate a lot of my learning about playing music, teaching music, performing music with others, playing off other musicians. There's a lot of metaphors that are applicable, but engineering, my God, it's perfect for NLP, neuro linguistic programming. How do you create the programs that work for the systems that work for the organizations, for the individual, the organizations within the individual? It's excellent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us about your experience with NLP. When did you start learning it? Certainly, it wasn't just for me, was it?
Well,
Maybe it was.
formally, yes.
Okay.
I had my experience with NLP started a long time ago with a really good friend of mine, former colleague, who moved to London for a while and trained under Bandler and came back going, I learned this amazing stuff, Seema. You got to know this. First of all, you can't say but. Never say but. You must say and.
Wow.
And so and we talked about pattern interrupts and all this stuff. And so I started incorporating those tips, if you will,
Mhm.
into my leadership, into my day-to-day work and my management. And I always had in mind that I really wanted to learn NLP properly. And then when I pivoted and went into coaching, and I had in mind, I really want to learn NLP from one of the masters, because I think there are a lot of, you can go onto Udemy and pay $7 and get a course where you learn everything. And I thought, that's not what I want. I want to really know it, and I want to be able to ask questions and get behind the reasoning as to where did this come from. That's pulling my engineering brain, but where did it come from? Like, why is this like this? And then what pops into my email but a message from Doug O'Brien saying, hey, I'm running this NLP. I thought, I will sign up for that. And I think actually I did all of them, didn't I? So there was Sleight of Mouth, and then NLP, and then the Neo-Ericksonian hypnosis. And that really, it's been, a very groundbreaking experience for me, because the way you do it, you understand why. It's not just follow the script mechanically.
Right.
You get what's going on, and that gives you building blocks to adapt, which as a coach is really, I think, pretty important.
Beautiful. It's really, it's heartening for me to hear you say that, because that is, of course, my intention, but it doesn't always work that way for everybody. You know, we do in the course of the trainings, hypnosis trainings, we give you scripts, you know, what to say in the situation, not recommending that you follow them in a session, but it's a good training thing to start with. You know, in NLP, we give you some of those recipes. We teach you how to do a 6-step reframe, and what's step 1 and what's step 2 and what's step 3. You know, we teach those things, you know,
Yeah.
And my goal is always to teach it in such a way that you're learning, you know, the kind of underpinnings of why step 1 is step 1 and why step 2 is step 2, and how you can then do that in other circumstances. I've used the analogy before of being like a chef, you know, where you're not just following a recipe book. Anybody, I suppose, could follow a recipe if you can, you know, read it and understand what a teaspoon is opposed to a tablespoon, and, you know, follow the directions. Anybody can pretty much do that. But to be a chef and to be able to, like, basically walk into any kitchen and go like, what's here? Let's make something wonderful, and just, you know, improvise and make something out of whatever it is you got. That's what I'm talking about, you know, having the basics of behind of what the generative. In fact, I used to, when I teach, I wonder if it's still here. Well, I had one of my old NLP manuals that I'd worked with when I used to teach with my late great partner, Kevin Creedon. We called it generative NLP because we wanted to have people really feel like they were co-creators of the field. You know, they weren't just following somebody else's, you know, great old Richard Bandler's recipes, you know, how to do this change work. And we do what Richard did, open the page to 32 for that particular thing. But, you know, to find out, like, how I can do it, how I would do it differently. Because that is what NLP is all about, really. So let me ask you, I remember, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I remember we often finish our 4-month cohorts, because our 12-month membership is divided up into sections. Usually focus on one thing, like sleight of mouth for 4 months. So when we finish our 4-month cohort on NLP, I like to get people to create their own processes, to pick up their own stuff out of whole cloth. You know, to say, you know, if we make up an imaginary patient, client, if you will. So say, like, you know, George is what, 24. He has blah blah. You know, we make up this person, and then we say, okay, what would you do if they walked into your office with that situation and wanting this? What would you do? And create a situation. You made up one, if I recall correctly, that was pretty darn good. And I'm told you still use it. Is that, am I?
The Mary Poppins process, was it?
Yeah. Yeah. Mary
Poppins. The Mary Poppins process. So it's interesting because I think, okay, I'll go one step further, Doug. You promised everything would be baked into our muscle memory, our mental muscle memory, right? And that's happened so far that I mean, I don't think I would go out and look at what was our Mary Poppins process, and which was, we were having people look into each window, like Mary Poppins with the umbrella, right? And look into each window and understand these different perspectives of that, you know, that they had on something, and then come back and take those insights, you know. So maybe you go into, you know, the child's room, and maybe you go into the parents' room, and maybe you go into the shower, maybe you come out and you get these different insights around whatever that circumstance was. And I don't think I've used that formally, and yet the understanding that inside one person there are all these insights to be had.
Yeah.
In a way, how you get there, it's very like in the moment. I will literally make stuff up because I don't need to follow, as you say, the script. It really is baked in. The other one that came to mind, not on that one, but as you were speaking, was the collapsing of anchors. So, an anchor, it has my hands, right? The collapsing of anchors. And even if I'm not collapsing an anchor, I will remember Doug saying the opposite of anger is not peace, because you need the same level of energy. You know, you need the acid and the base, and you need equal parts. So somebody says, I'm really angry. And I said, well, what would it feel like the opposite? Oh, it'd be really peaceful. I'm like, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
we need something else. So how I think it's very deeply embedded. And then sometimes I will go back because the library is there, and you know, I need an integration of parts. I don't want to forget a step, you know, and I will go through and look formally because I know I need to follow the process and not miss something. So if there's a process that I haven't used in a long time, then I'll refer back, you know. So it's either very fluid or very structured, depending on really what I need in the moment. And
Very
that's
nice.
great. You know?
Very, very cool. Yeah, so we what Seema's referring to is we have this very large library. I'll show it to you. This is what it looks like. There it is. So that's the library.
Like that.
It's kind of like that, yeah. Or maybe it's more like this one. This is also a nice big library. But yeah, no.
More like the other one.
What's that?
It's more like the other one.
More like this one?
Yeah, my Mary Poppins one in there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, we have a library of everything I've written or published about NLP is available to you as a member of our cohort. You can go to published stuff and download things or just watch them. There's videos, there's audios, there's published things, there's step-by-step processes, there's demonstrations of the process that you want to do. So you really, even if you don't go through the cohort, which would be silly to not go through the cohort, but even if you didn't, just having access to a library like that is pretty amazing, actually.
It really is. It really is, because then you know, it's great to have a workbook and having access to Doug's a great teacher, so having access to you, demonstrating it, walking through it, giving examples, giving a couple examples, it just makes all the difference, you know. And really, you know, and I work with really senior people who don't take a lot of BS. You know, they've seen and are responsible for a lot. And when they come to me and they have a breakthrough because of one of these, then I feel like I've given a real gift, and not only to them, but to the people that they're going to impact, right? So it's really, there's a big trickle-on effect to being able to use these and have access. And there's the ones you master and you use all the time, and then there's the ones where you're like, change personal history? That was the long one, right? I gotta go back and look at it. And, you know, so that's,
Yeah, and what's interesting to me about the change personal history process is that it speaks to, you know, kind of how NLP developed and why we can still develop things as we go. It's not a set thing that is now, okay, this is NLP and must follow the rules. It is an ongoing, evolving thing. And the way the change personal history process, which is now how it came to be, and how it is now, you know, sort of a big important thing of the NLP recipe book. You know, it's kind of like the thing you do every Friday night for your family recipe, family dinner. But change personal history came out of, in the early days of NLP, when they were developing NLP. Typically what happened is that people would meet over at Richard Bandler's house. This is like early days. This is before NLP was called NLP. Right. So they would meet over at Richard Bandler's house, and John would come over, and John Grinder would come over, and all these people would meet up there. You know, David Gordon, Stephen Gilligan, all these people would be there, and Robert Dilts, and they would just experiment. And Richard and John would probably have been working on something for the week, and they'd say, you know, we've noticed that if you refine your sensory acuity enough, that if you ask someone what their favorite breakfast cereal is, and then watch their other than conscious responses, you can see what their favorite breakfast cereal is. And it's like, what? That's ridiculous. That makes no sense whatsoever. But then they'd send people off into the different rooms around the house. And David Gordon told me, I'm pretty sure it's David, said that they'd be in these rooms, they'd be just like, staring at each other's cheeks. It's like, what's your favorite breakfast cereal? Just watching. And he said, I swear to God, I could see like Cheerios popping up in the person's cheeks. Said, you like Cheerios, don't you? And he said, yes, I do. How'd you know? So, it's kind of wacky and weird. But sometimes in these processes, in order to practice something that they've been working on, they'd say, okay, I'll be the guide, you be the experimenter. So think of a problem and I'll use this process to fix your problem. And so they were with this one woman, I don't know who it was, said, think of a problem. And she said, I don't have any. And they said, what do you mean you don't have any? I said, well, every time I have a problem, I just go back into my history and change it. And then I grow up with a different history. So it's no longer a problem. It becomes a resource. And they went like, we want to do that. So I want to learn that. So what did they do? They applied the whole thing about NLP, which is to ask, how do you do that? They applied that NLP questioning thing to this person and said, well, let's model her right now. Right now, we will model the step-by-step procedure with how she does that. That's what NLP grows out of, that curiosity of what is the subjective experience of this person that I'm in right now? What is the structure of their subjective experience? So that we can find first step A, step B, step C. We can figure out what their steps are, and then we can do those steps in our own brain, right? And get the same experience as well, or slightly different. So maybe the steps were wrong, or something's different. So we refine it and make it better. But that's how NLP grew, and it's still how it's growing. And the Mary Poppins process was a great example of that. Because what do you do? It's a symbolic sort of, not perhaps universal, but common experience of floating in the air like Mary Poppins with the umbrella, right? But the metaphor of going into different people's rooms is like stepping into another person's experience and taking on their references, their resources. But it's symbolic. It's not somebody else. It's really part of you. Yes. But it's helping you get access to the resources that perhaps you hadn't otherwise gotten access to without that metaphor of floating into, the children's room, or the maid's room, et cetera. So it's so interesting that it's just an ongoing thing, that when you look at it that way, it's still an evolving situation.
Yeah. Values elicitation.
Do you do that much?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why? Because, people who are frustrated at work, burning out, and the more senior you are, the more this will apply. A lot of times there's a values misalignment between your values and your company's values, right? So you can fake that when you're, in a more individual contributor role, in a more junior role.
Yeah.
As you become more senior, that becomes a bigger problem. And so people who show up on my door feeling tired, burned out, underappreciated, not seen, all of that, very often, when you pull away all the layers of the onion and get to the nice little green core, you start to need to understand, what are your values? What's most important to you, and what's important in the organization, and are they in any way related? And so many people say, well, how do I know what my values are? I'm like, we can do that.
I know how to do that. Yeah.
So it's those, those, which isn't a long one, like the change personal history. You can do that in a few minutes, and wow, integration of parts. I do a lot. Integration of parts. On the one hand, I want this. On the one hand, I love my job. And on the other hand, I'm really looking for this new adventure. Oh, that's interesting. You know? So those,
Yes, exactly.
and the, and the thing that's so interesting is it's such an internal um, uh, integration, isn't it,
Yeah,
of what's going on, and what comes out can be this. By the time they come back the next week, how did it go? And they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. I don't even know what the issue was.
right, exactly, right. Isn't that true?
Right?
I was once doing a master practitioner training with my friend Jonathan Altfeld. We were training, and this woman had this terrible problem that Jonathan did this process with her at the front of the room, and then he said, "So think about their problem again." She says, "Like what problem? I didn't have any problems." So, well, let's play back the tape because you did 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You know, it was pretty crazy. She'd literally forgotten that it had been a problem.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that is really interesting about human brains, you know, that we can, you know, have a kind of experience like that, because it had been a major stumbling block for this person. And now then when it was basically evaporated and gone, it was just like it had never been there.
Yeah.
Which is great from an operational standpoint, but bummer if you want to get paid for the change work. So it's good we had it on tape, you know, it's good to,
Yeah.
so interesting you should say that eliciting values is a short one compared to change person history. I don't know if that's always the case, because I'll tell you a story. This has happened more than once. That, you know, they'll do an elicitation of their values, and for a while it's kind of like, yeah, well, I want this and I want this and I want this and I want this. So is that it? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, those really make good sense. I can see why those are important to you. Let me just ask you, if there was something else that's important to you in your job or in your work, what could it be? What else might it be? And they'll go like, oh, I guess I want just a feeling of satisfaction. Okay, great. So that's what else might there be? Well, I want this. And suddenly we've opened the floodgates, right? And there's all these other values start spilling out that they had not, you know, put in their top 5, that were just, you know, at the top of their, you know,
Yes.
top of their head. And then interestingly, once we finally elicited, like now maybe there's 15 of them, then we start putting them in the actual order of what's really most important to you. You know, when we start really putting them in that more refined order, sometimes those things that they didn't even have on their original list become number 1 or number 2. You know, they're the most important thing. They didn't even know about it consciously. But now it's like, I'm aware it's my number 1 value. That's what I'm here for. That's, if I don't get that, then I don't want to be here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's a really,
Yeah. No, that's exactly my experience. And I think that came up in the, you know, in the training. I think even when I did it, it was the things at the bottom popped to the top. And because I'm prepared for that, then I know, okay, I know that the time that I need to put aside the time to dig a little further.
Yeah.
And then coming back to essential coaching skills, that's an essential coaching skill, right? Like what's at the surface.
Yeah.
Isn't there?
It's an essential coaching skill, because it's very easy to be surface. You know, very easy for a coach to say some things like, you know, this is my process for success, and put somebody through their little paces, and you follow these steps, you're going to be fine. But it's very easy to be surface level for that. But when you really get down to the heart of the matter, if you will.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's, you know, and then, you know, integrating it all, I use sleight of mouth deeply in my practice. And then all the way at the other end, like all the, you know, the metaphors and the language, or, you know, so, you know, what do you want to do? Yeah, I really would like to, I don't know. I think I'm going to stay here. You really want to stay at your job? Oh yeah, I really want to stay at my job. You know, that's really what I want to do. And I'm like, Doug taught me what to look for, right? So being rapport building, you know, all of those, the visual, audio and kinesthetic language, and you know, all of that, it's, because I'm coaching women leaders and they've never learned this. And do you know what a difference it makes in their world? Just an agreement frame. So really integrating it all together, and yet having them. And so I've almost forgotten, I think, where one stops and the next one starts, but having them all come together that way, you have this magical toolkit embedded in you, and off you go.
Yeah,
and you help, like you get to help people, right?
It's very sad.
Like it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Excuse me. I just need you to get my little. Oh, never mind. This thing that was over there should be over here. Apologize. Don't need to go into details. So yes, thank you so much for saying that. And again, it warms the cockles of my heart to hear you saying that. No, it does. Because it is what I strive to do. I think these things blend together.
Yeah.
When you sort of get them into your fingertips, when you get them into your bones, they do. When you do hypnosis, it's really helping people to change a belief that they have.
Yeah.
So it's not at all unusual. In fact, it is usual that I'll do sleight of mouth and NLP and hypnosis all in the same session with somebody.
Yes. And the coaching's great.
Yeah.
Coaching's even better when you have clients. And so there is a side of our practices that are marketing and sales.
Yeah.
And this deeply comes into that, right? Because you understand what persuading, you understand how and when to shift your voice, what to emphasize, all of that comes out. And because it's baked in, it starts to become more natural, and as somebody who never had a background in sales at all and just wants to help everybody, it's that's also, it's a non-negligible part of what we have to do, and it's important. So
it's a non-negligible part. That's an interesting phrase, Seema. A non-negligible part.
Non-negligible.
That's
greater than zero. Sorry, yes. Engineering moment, right? It's an important part.
Is that the engineering you speaking there?
That's the engineering, yes.
Non-negligible part. Okay. And in English, you mean it's important. Yeah.
I mean, it's important.
Yeah. And by the way, and it is true. And part of the reason on my Essential Coaching Skills podcast, which you have been on, I sometimes have people whose primary focus is helping people work their business, because we have to do that as coaches or therapists or however it is that we're applying these skills. Coaching works better when you've got clients, therapy works better when you've got patients, it all is kind of a business, and we have to, and fortunately can apply these same skills to marketing and stuff. But not that I'm doing that right now. I didn't want to give that impression, but that is what we have to do. We have to put ads out there, have to do ads to persuade people to take a course. In fact, I've had a guy on the course called, what's his name? I should have thought of his name before I started talking about it. Oh, shit. Oh, God. Good friend of mine. Long time. I've known him for years. Bosom buddies. Somebody really important has been on there. His really just focuses. He was one of the first guys I ever knew who did NLP for business, for sales. Kendrick Cleveland, sorry, I beg your pardon. But before Kendrick came along, it was just therapy. Bandler and Grinder modeled Fritz Perls. They modeled Milton Erickson. They modeled Virginia Satir. They modeled therapists. Yes. Frank Farrelly and provocative therapy. It was a therapeutic thing. It wasn't used for sales. No, don't do that. But in fact, NLP is not about therapy at all, though it obviously can be, is a lot of times, but it's about the structure of subjective experience. So you can apply modeling to sales. You can apply modeling to sports. You can, in fact, I was talking yesterday in the webinar, one of my recent clients is a professional football player, and it can easily be applied to sports.
Yes.
Yeah.
And subjective experience. There's never any of that in your personal life ever, is there?
No, 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 no. That's all for
No.
other people.
Like, yeah,
That's
yeah.
other
So, I mean, all of this stuff that we learn enhances all of our communications.
well, for other people. For other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to apply it to ourselves.
No. But it does, right? Because you understand, well, if my husband comes with something and he's really upset and he has this and he has that, I know it's not just at the surface. And then if I understand how he's speaking and how he's modeling it, it helps me communicate better, right? Or if my 13-year-old daughter, never any challenges there, right? Comes with something, I can guide her through it so much more effectively. So there's our coaching practice and what we're offering the world. There's getting the clients, and then there's our lives that are also, right?
Yeah, for sure. And it is also for our
Yeah.
own selves as well. I mean, I was talking with a friend of mine who's another NLP trainer, such as myself. And we were comparing notes on work that we do on ourselves. And we were specifically about the core transformation process. And that, you can do it on yourself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of amazing thing to just, be going through these questions and, feeling it inside. And then, there's not a script exactly, but there's a format for how you go through the process. So you just follow the format, but you're just asking questions and answering the questions and asking questions and answering the questions. And you can do it on yourself. And, I do self-hypnosis pretty much every day.
Yeah.
You too?
Yes. 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 And the changes happen faster and faster, don't they? As you put that practice in place, then the shifts that you want to, so much not triggered anymore, because every time there's a trigger and you go into a state, you're like, oh, look, there's a state. I'm in a state. How did I get into that state? What did I do to get into that state? Now, do I want to be in that state? Is it appropriate? Oh, well, maybe this little bit. Oh, maybe I want a little bit of that. Then I do your cloud, and then the dials, and we do all that. I use that a lot with my clients too.
Yeah, that is a great process. That just for the record,
states. Yeah.
Just for the record, nobody's going to learn that anyplace else except here, unless people have learned it from a graduate of one of my classes with Kevin. My friend Kevin and I made that up. Mostly Kevin made that up. He's not around anymore to teach it, but I carry on the teaching of it. But yeah, it was something I'm really proud of, and I do it all the time too. And just as an example, when that was first being originated, the cloud technique we're talking about, Kevin had this experience where he was all mad. He had spent hours. I don't know if you've ever driven on Route 95 between New York City and Boston, but it can get rather congested.
Don't know.
It's the major artery between New York City and Boston. It can get quite congested at different times of the day. In fact, can and will definitely every day at certain times of the day get quite congested. So he was driving up to visit his family. He's from Boston originally, and spent hours in traffic, and it was just steamed. He was just fuming. And by the time he got to his family house, he was just like, to be tied. And so his little, like, I don't know, 6-year-old nephew or whatever said, "What's wrong, Uncle Kevin?" He said, "I just been in traffic." And the kid said, "But you're not in traffic now." And Kevin went like, "Ah, right. Hi, how you doing?" Sort of instant state change, just sort of like let go of that. Yeah, and that was part of the thing when we came up with this cloud. We'd taken this course by Stephen Molinsky and blah blah blah. But my thing was like, I thought this was great. This was the Stephen Walensky thing we learned together was just so great. And he said, yeah, but then what? Once you take the state away and you're, just state free, that you're not negative anymore, you're just on neutral ground. What if we added some positive things to it? And I said, can you do that? Can we change somebody else's process? He said, well, change the name. We'll call it a cloud. So he made it up, but we developed it together, and I use it all the time. I use it all the time. And exactly as you said, I realize when the state happens, when I'm in this negative state, it's like a storm cloud has come over me, and I'm in this state because of this thing that's happened to me, but I don't really have to stay in it. And by the way, I generated it in the first place. There's no actual storm cloud that came over me. So I'm feeling I created this in my first place. So I just metaphorically step out of the cloud, blow it away, and then step back in again. It's like, what do I want to feel instead? And then turn up the dials, if you will. Richard Bandler with his way of doing the control room by, move up a slider or something like that in his control room. But I just turn up dials and like faucets in the shower stall, turn up a little more cold, a little bit more hot, a little more happy, a little bit more pride or whatever, positive feelings you want to have. It's pretty cool. And like I said, that's not in any of those textbooks. That's something that's from Kevin and me. So you'll get that in ours.
So useful.
Yeah.
The other one is just those simple little anchors on your fingers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I give a training on how to deal with manipulative people, toxic people in toxic environments. And it can get pretty dark and pretty triggering pretty quickly because I know most people at some point in their lives have or will have dealt with that. And it can be really, really awful. And so before I get into it, I anchor a state of joy on one of their fingers. Wow. Right? So that if you get triggered, if something goes wrong, if my internet gets cut and you're in this like, well, you can go back to that state. You have it now, And so these little things where you can, it's not, I haven't done a whole NLP coaching session. It's just these things that can make every aspect of what you're doing better.
Neat.
Right? Yeah. So those are fun.
So how often do you do like group things, group trainings and stuff?
Usually twice a week.
Twice a week?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I usually have my first cohort that's learning. You'll love it. I've taken sleight of mouth and I've applied it to leadership.
Oh.
Yep. So I do a lot of that, and I've added in some other things around difficult conversations and mastering conflict, and that's like the program. And so I meet with them once a week over each module, and then the ones that want to continue, we have every week or every 2 weeks, depending. We have a call for 4 months, to take that into real life situations in the workplace. And then I have a mastermind. We meet monthly. So probably most weeks when I'm not, I'm European on holiday, then I have a couple calls. Yeah. With groups. And and being able to apply it in groups is also something that I saw you master.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for that. Yeah, but that's what I was curious about. So your coaching isn't just one-on-one. You actually do groups and stuff. It's neat.
I do groups. I do groups. I did Wednesday. Yep, yesterday. Yeah, a whole future pacing of what would it be like if you applied these in 3 months and 6 months and 12 or a day, a few months, and then 12 months from now. And then I realized that as I was doing it, I was using more and more hypnotic language, right? Too. And it was, they came out of it having this experience of what would become possible for them. And,
very cool.
It's very, very powerful. And you can absolutely do it in groups. So, yeah,
Cool.
stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, Seema, thank you so much for being here to tell us all about that. I think I've kept you here longer than I asked you to. I said, could you be here for 2 minutes or so, just chat with the people? It's like, you've been here pretty much the whole
Well,
time.
I really hope it helps. I hope it helps, people understand the depth of what you provide and the soundness of it, and that you can take a little piece or a full piece, or you can have the cherry or the whole cake, depending on the situation.
Yeah, that's true. You can have the cherry or the whole cake. Nice metaphor. You're really coming up with these metaphors. Is this
Right.
just normal? Or is this you just bringing this out for this special occasion? Are you a metaphor maven?
Both. As an IT person, nobody understands anything about IT, so I got used to using a lot of metaphors,
Huh?
and then you've enhanced that, because now I do it intentionally.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Hey, listen, I'm
Thank you.
going to put you back in the green room, but don't go
Cool.
away. I want to talk to you some more.
I
If you
won't.
can, if you
Very
can
good.
hang out a bit. But I just want
Absolutely.
to, I don't want to bore you with all the stuff I'm going to be telling people. So
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. See you again
Thanks,
real
Doug.
soon. Seema Newell, everybody. So yeah, we will be also adding how to get hold of Seema if you want to in the chats or wherever that is. But yeah, pretty amazing. Really, wow, generous of her to spend all this time with us. So I just wanted you to get a gist of a feel for a real life person, what it means to be in this kind of cohort. Because it's not just a video. I'm with you live every day, 3 days a week. Tuesdays, sleight of mouth, Wednesdays, NLP, Thursdays, hypnosis with an office hour on Thursday afternoon, just where you can talk about anything, usually related to sleight of mouth, NLP, and hypnosis, but nevertheless, anything. People sometimes talk about the weather, politics, or whatever. It's personable. It's personalized. It's really getting deep into the training so that you get it in your bones. The reason we do it like every week for 4 months in a typical cohort is because you get it a chance to learn it, to go into practice groups to practice it, but then you can also take it home, if you will, and practice it with your clients or with your family. Or a lot of people create practice rooms, practice groups outside of the official class. In fact, it's recommended that you do that, and most people follow those recommendations. And so that's created some lifelong friendships and relationships with people who are like-minded and interested in the same sorts of things and wanting kind of the same outcomes, to use NLP and hypnosis, et cetera, for their personal betterment and also for their business betterment. So it really helps in those areas as well. So you are invited to join this community. We do this probably twice a year. We open up the gates, open up the doors to folks. The next time will be probably 6 months from now when we do it again, maybe less. When the 4-month cohort is 4 months of class time, there are holidays, there are things that get in the way. So 4 months actually stretches out to at least 5, and then we do another launch sequence. So it's usually about every 6 months that we open the door. So we will open them again in 6 months, but if you want to join us this time, now is the time to do it. And little secret, little just reality check here is that I turned 69 about a month ago, and not planning on working much past my 70s. In fact, this may be my last year, maybe my second to last year, but it's not going to go forever. If you think, well, I'll do it next year, I'll do it next time. Yeah, maybe. Maybe you will. And the library will still exist, and the videos and stuff will still exist. So you'll have that. I'll always have that. Well, always, whatever that means. But as long as I am alive to pay the bills for the Kajabi library stuff, you'll have access to it as members. So that's great. But the live thing, I would recommend that you do it sooner rather than later. Just saying. I'm in good health. I'm happy. We're doing. I get plenty of sleep, eat well, exercise every day. Nothing's going away that I know of anytime soon, but I never know. So I definitely would advise you to join us sooner rather than later. That way you can get the more reps in, because it is like anything, like piano playing or running a marathon or whatever. The more that you put in the work and practice, the better you get. Better you get at it. Just that's the way it works. It's just the way it works. I know there's a lot of trainings that say, "Hey, I'll teach you sleight of mouth. I'll teach you NLP. I'll teach you one of these things in 4 days." It's like, they'll maybe throw a lot of information at you in 4 days. Maybe if you're some sort of super genius, you'll absorb it all. But if you're like a normal person, chances are you need a little bit more time. I know I did. I've been working at it still. I still learning new things. I've been doing this since 1985. I took my first firewalk in 1985. I'm still learning, still taking classes from people on occasion. I worked with Bill O'Hanlon again last November. I'm still learning. So it's a lifelong learning, but why don't you take at least a year and join us for as much learning as you can get out of it in that period of time. I would love to have you aboard. And that's pretty much it for today. And we'll be here again tomorrow, same time, same place, to do that. So just once again, real quick, I'm going to put up into, let me see, how do I do that? Present slides. This is from yesterday's membership, so I'm going to have to toggle through it a little bit to get to the end where the information is. There it was. There you go. So that's the URL, essentialcoachingskills.com, and the Essential Coaching Skills membership. If you just go to essentialcoachingskills.com and don't want to type in that whole thing, then you'll find it. There's links there, or you can scan that QR code to get to our membership page. A year-long membership is approximately $3,500. It's a little less than that, and there's also a monthly way you can do it as well. Then you stay in for 4-month cohorts, repeat, like I said, at least twice in a year's time, sometimes more. And there are other courses and things that come along as well that you'll be privy to, you'll be eligible to enjoy, like storytelling and things like that. I do those periodically. So please scan that, go to that site, join us. And if I don't see you then, I'll see you tomorrow. If you want to come by tomorrow, I'll be doing the same thing, the same place, both on Facebook and on YouTube. So thanks again for being here. See you next time.